Mr. Brooks, Superintendent's report.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming out. I have a few announcements before we get to a couple of short presentations and some minor discussions. For future thought, I'm going to ask the Board of Education to do some considering for next year's graduation. It's funny, we just finished with this year's graduation, but next year's calendar is a little bit funky the way that things land. The last day of Regents rating, the rating day, is Wednesday of, I think it's Wednesday the 26th of June. So that midweek end is kind of awkward. Mr. Lawler and I and the high school staff are looking at whether or not effectively we could have graduation on Friday the 21st as opposed to Friday the 28th. Now, theoretically, we could have it Wednesday. It just seems that that's kind of an awkward place to put it. So just put it in the back of your minds at some point in time, we'd like to have a dialogue on when graduation should be in the, for June of 2019. There is a lot of discussion going on around the region about where that's going to be and what districts are going to do. So really, I'm just planting a seed right now for you to think about that going forward. No action needed right now, just food for thought.
Will they have met all the requirements at that point?
That's what we're looking at, because those last two exams on that Monday, Tuesday, because Wednesday is rating day, there's no exams. The Monday, Tuesday exams, we have to look at, are any of those graduation specific? And then Friday, is there anything that's graduation specific that can't be done prior to knowing what happens at graduation? So gotcha. That's what they have to look at. So no reason to we really need to vet it ourselves first. Indications early are that maybe we can do it the 21st, but we need to spend some time thinking about it. 18-19 calendar, the Board of Regents has made some changes to how the calendar year is calculated. As opposed to 180 days, they're moving to minutes and hours. So we're looking at that very, very closely to see what that truly means to our student calendar. I'm just holding out the possibility that may mean that we have to make some adjustments to our student calendar that's already been adopted, but any changes would be minor as far as what we do for the staff development days. Right now we have 2 superintendent's conference days on the calendar. We can have up to 4, but we also have to factor in now hours for parent-teacher conferences, and also the half-day staff development days. So that's what we're in the process of trying to figure out what that means and how it actually calculates out. So.
Plus also all the delays and all the early dismissals.
Correct. There's some indication that 2-hour delays will still count towards your aid package, but 3-hour delays may be problematic, so we have to look at it, and it really depends upon what your actual length of day is. As I was talking with the Chancellor of the Board of Regents, she said, use creativity when creating your calculations. I said, okay. She said there's a lot of variety in the state as far as the length of a student day. So some districts have a longer student day, so just calculating out an extra half an hour a day, 45 minutes a day over a long year is a lot more instruction than a school that might only have 5 or 5 hours and 15 minutes in a day. So there's a lot of variation that the state's trying to look at it not just by days, but by hours. Interesting. Just going to ask Mike if he could give a quick update on 3 things, excuse me. Where we are with the phone installation. We also have a initial draft of the security audit that we just received, and also a request from the town of Marlborough. So Mike, if you could hit those 3 points, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Brooks, and good evening, everyone. First is the phone system. All transactions to purchase the phone system have been executed. We have started receiving components of the phone system. I've actually sequestered a room at the high school to actually account for all the inventory as it comes in the next few weeks. We have all the phones. The next few weeks will be servers and switches and all kinds of wires that we'll use to hook up those components. Right now, beginning the 3rd week in July, Anise is on site. There's actually a series of meetings. We'll be reviewing the dial plan for the district. We expect some changes to that dial plan. In our prior phone installation, we really rolled over all the existing numbers that we had at the Marlboro Central School District. So when you look at our directory, you'll see a variety of 236 numbers, you'll see a variety of 795 numbers. You'll also see like a new convention. We're looking to consolidate all of those under a much more comprehensive dial plan is what it's called. So they'll be on site the third week in July, and they will begin programming all the equipment, placing the equipment. We're slated right now for the first or most likely the second week of August to install the phones and activate the system and cut over at that time. That would allow us to train 12-month employees who are here over the summer anyway. It would also allow us to work out any bugs that and programming that most likely always happens with a new system. We've got to kind of fine-tune it. And then we'd be ready to start the year off training our 10-month employees as they come back. So that's just an overview of the phones. So far, our project manager has been in touch, and the schedule is up and running.
I have a question, Mike, with the phones.
Yes.
So when they go in, because I know there's a lot of times when you call the schools, and even the superintendent's office, you can't get anybody to pick up the phone. It always goes to an answering machine. So will it roll over to another secretary's desk or another administrator's desk? Will they roll over, or it's this, because that's one of the problems.
Yeah, there are.
That's one of the biggest problems that we have here.
We will be planning rollovers. We always try to make sure that a caller does get a live person, and I know that will be looked at.
Yeah, because it definitely needs to, I don't care what building you're in, it goes to one person and only one person. And even here, if I call the business office, it goes to Jackie, and if Jackie's not at her desk, you can't get anybody else. It doesn't roll over to anywhere. Right. Even at the
It's
high
definitely an
school,
issue,
the
but we
middle
have to-
school, the element, all of the buildings. So it definitely needs, because if a parent is in trouble or needs a, there's an emergency in their family, you keep calling the school and nobody's answering because that person's out.
Yes.
It runs into a problem, so that was one of my biggest concerns.
That will be taken into consideration.
Thank you.
Next, the security audit. We just received that, I believe it was yesterday, and I forwarded it to Mr. Brooks. We are delving into it. There will be some time for us to kind of absorb that. Certainly want to ask any clarifying questions before we present it to the board and really discuss that with our administrative team. But the important thing is we do have it. I got through about 25% of it, and some of those things will be familiar to us. Others will be some new perspectives that Alterra brings and some recommended solutions for any of the gaps in our security, which there are, and we know that, but they do address the gaps and ways to kind of move forward in closing those gaps, and which is why we went through with that. So I'd expect there's going to be much more discussion in July and certainly in August. Because at this time we've collected each of the updated safety plans from each of the school buildings. Those things have to get approved by the board in August. We have to update them to the portal for state approval in that time frame. So that's good summer work for us, and that's scheduled to be done. The town of Marlboro, moving to the third item, Mr. Brooks asked for a report out. The town of Marlboro is interested in updating this shared meeting space. When we put in the cart with the projector and the screen, that was kind of something that we did just to kind of move in here. We always meant to reassess what this looked like and kind of move towards a better tech for not just the folks attending the meeting, but for us as well. So what we took a look at was we've packaged purchasing 2 80-inch monitors that would be installed here. They would actually be installed, it wouldn't go in place of the screen. That's actually problematic for us. We're kind of boxed in because of that screen. But in truth, behind these false walls, these are false walls here, the fold-out lunch tables are still there because this was a lunch and a gym, and it certainly still could be. So we really can't go through those false walls and taking the measurements and looking at it with Mr. Cavazza. We weren't confident. An 80-inch TV has some weight to it. We really need to be anchored. So we're going to go up, and we'll work on the cement area. Those pillars there are big enough. We've kind of taken all the measurements along with the mounting brackets. So if you could picture 2 80-inch monitors up in between those window sets, The one on the right would be angled for better viewing by the Board of Education or judge or Town of Marlborough meetings. The one to our left would be angled for better viewing by the public. The laptop is, actually, we have a new setup here on the car, so we would reuse the laptop. We're talking about getting a new lectern. It's more of a technology type of lectern. The laptop would then be kind of installed to the lectern, and people using that would present from there. That would get rid of this cart in the middle. So that's in the proposal, as well as they want to also use Chromebooks at their meetings, and they want to use our infrastructure. So for a while here, we had a regular, wireless router that was installed here when the meeting room was done. It was the town's equipment, but the router's not very strong, certainly to necessitate our board meetings here, and obviously the new board docs product. We installed one of our own Ruckus wireless systems. It's just an extension of our wireless network here at the school district. But it is super fast, and they want to kind of tap into that. So the total of that proposal comes to just under $8,000. It's $7,911. Everything's state contract. We actually got better pricing than some of the state contracts under that. So that is what they asked us to share the cost in. So it would be about $4,000 for the school, $4,000 for the town.
Yeah, Mr. Lanzetta approached me. The town's moving forward with this. They're going to do it. What his ask is would I ask the Board of Education if they're interested in contributing to that cost? That's where you folks.
Well, nothing deals with the fact that the video is kind of grainy and bad?
Well, we have talked about that. Unfortunately, it's their limitation that limits us from going full HD. They still do package the video to send to, it's not Verizon anymore, Time Warner anymore, it's Spectrum Services. So in order to package that, I think they have to be able to put it on a CD or burn it to a DVD. And if we go HD, it exceeds the capacity of a DVD. And so it's really that process that limits us from going to full HD, because you do see it.
There's no way with the equipment that we could have where they can have an A and a B camera?
We could, look, we installed our own wireless router. We could certainly install our own camera.
If we're going to go with this great technology and have the TVs and all that data, and if we go HD, then at least those people that don't make it, that'll trying to follow along, would actually be able to hear, see, because you watch them, if you're at the meetings, you know who it is.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's pretty poor.
I really, the equipment here behind me has really served us well throughout the years. We have updated it. We've updated the software. It's consistent and it does work. The only thing I'm really not happy about is that recording camera. I think it could be a higher quality. And I have asked if they would ask the company, well, just open up a portal or some kind of FTP where you could send it up there. But unfortunately, I don't think they're given that option. So that would remain to be a limitation.
Yeah, why don't we look into it a little bit further to see if there's something we can piggyback onto there, because you're right.
Sure.
If we're going to continue to have our board meetings available on YouTube, let's make it so that they're easily visible. The question now is, and certainly the board doesn't have to make an answer tonight, but the request is, does the Board of Education want to contribute to the cost of the television upgrade? Yeah. So instead of having the projectors, we would have 2 monitors and the associated technology to support it.
The other thing that I like about it is if you're going to do the monitors, is it's a security issue too, what's going on here, because when we are taping, a lot of everyone that's here and speaking, you don't get to see them. So it should be both ways, that everybody can see actually who's coming to attend a meeting and who is here on the board.
The ask right now is we have to really spend some time looking at what does the camera system mean. This is more for just the 2 monitors. So we're not talking about, at this moment, upgrading the camera. We're going to look into it a little bit more.
For me, even though I'm leaving, I think and I've said this before, is we should be looking at the camera system because it is a security issue all the way around.
Yeah.
Coming
would
in
also-
and out and who's here and who's not here.
Yep.
I would
for
also
me,
ask,
that's,
just for some
you know-
clarification of who would be spearheading that project. I
Right.
was also under the impression that the school would really be taking the initiative and getting that up and running, and they would share in the cost, but obviously some details still need to be discussed.
Yeah,
And I
because
like
they
the
don't,
HD.
they don't, especially if it's gonna be on our network, you're gonna, it's more, if we partner, we're gonna wind up taking on we've got much better technology.
Yeah, you know, if they're going to be interacting with our network, I usually prefer that we've got a hand in that, so, you know, security and all those other things.
You know, I've got some thoughts on it too. Maybe Mike and I can kind of talk after the meeting the next couple of weeks to figure out if there's a better way to approach it, but.
Okay. Russell, what's your thought? I mean,
It's the town's gonna get more use out of it than we are. And that's, I'm 50-50 on it.
okay.
Why do you say that, Russ? The monitors we're talking about, right?
Yeah. We're here every
Twice.
2 weeks, you know.
How often
First
are
and
they?
they're court, how often are
Well, it's not for, but I think it's really, they're really for planning board, zoning board,
Oh, all
town
the
board
board
meetings.
meetings.
They're gonna be utilizing it more than we are. I'm not opposed to doing it, but I don't know if it's a 50-50 split. You know?
Yeah, especially because we're gonna wind up, the camera thing, we're gonna wind up having to do on our own.
How often,
Well, I think you can work out the proportions, but I think it'd certainly be valuable for this meeting. Most people cannot see that during, especially if it gets busy, when you got a lot, budget meetings, I'm sure, and unless you're standing in the front row, you really can't see it. So if you can enhance that, it would definitely be a value for the board meeting. Talk about proportionally splitting it, we can do that, but I think it's worth partnering up in some way, you know. I think it's a value to both and everyone, and then who knows what you can do with it once it's there for community events maybe or something, I don't know.
James?
I'm not opposed to it. However, I'm wondering, is the 4K aidable for us? So would it really cost us 4,000? And have we used all the Smarter Schools Bond Act money? Is that applicable here as well?
Yes, it is aidable. We wouldn't really look to any of the Smarter Schools bond money for this. This is honestly for a technology project, 4K, 8K, not very big.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not necessarily opposed to it. Okay, good.
like I says, I like the idea of doing it, but I do like adding the cameras this way. It's full around, all the way around, and I think it's a positive thing for the community and for us.
Well, and if we do aidable, if we get, so in reality, if we agreed to do a 50-50 split, but their cost was $4,000, then our cost may only be $1,000,
Because the aid get.
because they're not eligible for the aid that we are.
Right.
I mean, would anybody be objectionable to doing that? Yeah, okay. So you have all the quotes and stuff, right? Yes. Okay, so when we get to the agenda, we'll do a motion to deal with it.
Right, we can put a dollar amount out,
Yeah.
even if it's a percentage.
Well, we're just gonna, if we have a quote, the town will pay to us $4,000. We'll do the project, or whatever 50% is, and then we'll do the project through our thing, we get aidable, and then, you know, maybe we only spend $500, maybe we spend 1,000 out of our pocket, but we definitely, they're only spending half, and we come out ahead, and we all have the benefit of it.
Sounds like a plan. Couple little last quick ones. We are still working on our contract with Orthopedic Associates for our services with our athletic trainer. The company, Orthopedic Associates, increased their fee quite a bit across the region. So Pat is negotiating with them regarding the contract language, but also looking for some enhancements to the services. So if there's an increased cost, we want to see enhancements to the services that we get. So we anticipate, hopefully, by the July meeting, at the latest by the August meeting, that we'll be able to approve that contract. But that's something we've been kind of lobbing back and forth across the net for the last month and a half or so with Orthopedic Associates, because they dropped that on all the districts kind of last minute.
Well, I mean, being they've made such changes, have we looked at if it would be more cost-effective or closely cost-effective to actually going to an actual employee?
Yeah, that's one of the options that Pat and I are looking at. Right now, it's not there, but if they keep on this cost structure increase, it might get to that point, because you factor in all the other added
Right.
costs. We're not quite there yet, but we're still trying to sand down that contract a little bit so that the cost may come down a little, or we get some real enhancements to the services. So that's just a heads up that that's why we haven't approved that contract yet or brought it to you, and we anticipate either the July meeting, but more likely the August meeting.
Does that contract, I know it covers the physical therapist, but doesn't it?
No, it
also-
covers the athletic trainer.
Trainer.
Yeah.
Men. But it also doesn't it cover the doctor that comes on to the games?
No.
No, this is just the
It's
athletic
separate.
trainer, yeah.
It can't wait till the August meeting. The August meeting's the end of the month.
That's true.
Yeah, we're gonna,
Yeah.
the ball's in their court. We looked at insurance coverages, we sent it through the attorneys, we had some proposed modifications to the contract. They didn't seem, we're looking for additional time in July because it was really an 11-month contract. They're not opposed to that additional time in July. So I'm just waiting to hear back from him.
Okay.
But I will follow up with them tomorrow and tell them that we have a hard deadline.
Thanks.
Is there another company?
Not really. That's part of the issue.
Not a lot of competition out there, and
Right. I mean, we could, that's one of the options we're looking at, is whether we should go out for a full RFP. But there's been a lot of dialogue amongst the athletic directors and the business officials to see what really is out there that would respond to the RFP. At the next meeting, I'm anticipating bringing to you a increase of a 1.0 special education teacher. I did give you a written brief on that, but I would like Rose, if she could speak to it so you can ask any questions. This is an enrollment increase that we just can't squeeze enough services out of what we're currently providing with our existing staff. So, Rose, if you could speak to that, please.
Yes, next year at the middle school, we'll actually have 16 more special education students than we do currently, with the smaller 8th grade class leaving and the larger 5th grade class coming in. With scheduling and their projected programming, with the current 7 teachers that provide services for DCT and special class students, there are 8 teachers at the middle school currently for special education. 1 does the self-contained transitions class, and that's her sole responsibility. So the 7 other teachers fulfill the roles of all the other special education mandates. We're projecting out that we need 40 class periods of special ed instruction. In order for us to do that, we would need an 8th person to fulfill those requirements. Currently this year there were 80 students at the middle school. Next year there'll be 96.
So my question is, one is, how many children are in each class?
In each grade.
In each one of the special ed
So
classes?
each program is, of course, specific to the child. The child can be in an ICT English and a special class for math. So it's a combination of all, the mandated programs that we offer between co-teaching, consultant teacher services, special class, again, the transition class separate. We also offer resource, which this year we tried, in the 13-14 school year, I was not in the district that year, they had removed resource from the programming and created a special class called instructional skills,
Right.
which you're allowed to have 8 students in rather than the mandated 5. We were not providing the continuum of services at the middle school with that structure. So this year, we tried to keep all those instructional skills at 5. And next year, we put back into programming resource, which is a mandated program.
So the resource rooms all have 5 kids in it?
That's state regulation, yes.
Because I know we've gone beyond and above that because we've had to ask permission.
Yep,
what
sometimes
you're saying is
sometimes
no.
that happens, because when we do scheduling, we map out the number of periods we would need, and then especially at the middle and high school, with scheduling, sometimes we have 6 kids in a resource, which we can apply for a waiver. We can also, because I have 3 in another one, because I couldn't get those students in there. So we are allowed to request a waiver to get that, as long as we can show that we did have enough space to begin with.
So our resource rooms only hold, we only go up to 6 with the waiver. Is that correct?
Well, final schedule is not done, but yes, I can tell you at the high school this year where we did run resource, they were at 5, I believe there was 1 at 6.
And the middle school is at 6 too? We're at 5?
This past year, we did not run resource at the middle school.
And my other question is, since that large class is coming up, is there a way that we can bring a teacher from the elementary school up to
We
cover
did-
that instead of hiring a new teacher?
We did look at that. The numbers at the elementary school, they're also high. Next year, we will be servicing 123 students. Fifth grade will have 11 classified students. The cap would be 12 in an integrated setting. That only leaves me wiggle room for 1. I could put them all in one class instead of separating them, because we currently have 2 sections of fifth grade.
Correct.
If I put them all in one, I have no room for growth. I also have second grade that is starting full, so I don't have a teacher to move.
Yeah, I'd asked Rose to be prepared for the questions tonight, but I want the board to be comfortable also that actually Rose and I spent a considerable amount of time on a big whiteboard, kind of looking at all the potential caveats and really questioning, well, what about this? What about this? What if we look at it from this direction or that direction? And I've been sitting on this now for 2 months and finally got to the point where Rose said, listen, it's time to get off the fence. I need you to decide. It's yes or no. Yes, we're going to be in compliance and we're going to recommend to the Board of Education to hire this position, or no, we're not going to be in compliance, we're going to violate IEPs and not hire the position. Okay, Rose.
And I do want to
We'll bring
mention
it to the board.
that it's not just me crunching numbers. Deb Clinton and her guidance staff at the middle school
Right.
at first said to me, we need a teacher and a half.
Well,
And
and
I
we're,
was
and we're
like,
not taking any action tonight on this.
Correct.
Just
This
information.
is information for tonight for action at the next board meeting, but I don't like
So-
to spring it on you without some time to think, so.
So Mike, are you ready to share the details around how you're going to fund that? And I had some questions
That
about
was
if
the
you're
other
going to use the...
There's a, yeah.
You know what I mean, right?
There's, all of our budgets have contingent money in them for special education, but I'm very comfortable that we won't dig into that contingent amount for this particular position. I'm just not ready, even probably for the July meeting, to say dollar for dollar, I'm going to not hire these paraprofessional or teaching positions in lieu of this one, because the schedules are just not there yet. But for the hiring process, we need to get this posted. So part of tonight is also to get a sense that if the board is going to look to the 9th for an approval, we'll post this week as an anticipated opening so we can get resumes flowing. So that the folks, once the 9th happens, and if the board does say yes, we can begin interviews right away. July is an important month for a new process for us, because now that we've got those conversions of teaching assistants complete, Rose, the principals, and then myself will be sitting down and looking at those charts to see, besides the 3 retirements that we have not filled right now, is there anything else that we can do with those positions? And also what we want to do with security enhancements. So it's a complicated answer, John, that will have an answer. I'm just not confident that that's going to be, you know, a pluses and minuses column for the 9th.
Do you have a different level of urgency for having to hire and backfill the aides if you decide to do that? Because I know you just said you want to do the special ed one
Yeah,
now.
no.
Are they different schedules or just?
Different schedules.
Yeah, okay.
There, you know, and the process is not as intense with the paraprofessional hiring process. You know, that's a little bit different than hiring the teacher. So
Yep.
the teaching one is the one that's urgent as far as getting the highest quality candidate as early in the summer as we can. Not that I don't want high quality paraprofessionals, but that calendar's a little bit more flexible. So making that recommendation in August is more palatable. Where the teacher one, we need that July. Anyway, that's informational again. That's all I have to report, except I'm going to pass it to Pat, who has a quality bus presentation geared up for us, no pun intended, with the two principals from the bus companies. So I give it to you, Mr.
Thank you. We're going to introduce, everybody knows Mr. Martucci, and it's Brett from the new company, the new parent ownership company. Mike's going to introduce, go through a little presentation on what's going on with Quality Bus, and then we'll be available for Q&A from the board.
So good evening. I'll get started. I'll Mike finishes setting it up. I think all of you know me. Again, my name is Mike Martucci, and with me this evening is Brett Wester. Brett is the region manager for the state of New York for National Express. So we come to you this evening with a brief presentation on some updates in general for next year, and then to explain to you a little bit about some reorganization that happened at our organization. Mike, could you just click that along for me? I'm sorry, you get a chance. So just in terms of the reorganization at Quality Bus. So for those of you that were not aware, Quality Bus was previously owned by myself and another individual who lived in North Carolina and really wasn't involved in the business on a day-to-day basis in terms of the operations of what we do. So as I thought about the long-term goals of the company and the stability not only for the students that we serve in the districts we serve, but also our employees, one of the options that we had was to kind of follow this tuck-in model, which involved the bus company tucking into a larger umbrella of companies, and that group of companies is National Express. I've known Brett and his team for a number of years. We've worked together as industry partners, and one of our focuses in terms of picking the next place for Quality Bus was picking a company that valued many of the same things that we did. So I'm going to kind of touch on a couple of the things that might look the same and a couple of things that will look different. And I think that what you're going to see is the changes that, that we have planned for next year are really all going to bring a lot of value, particularly in the name of safety for kids. So first, basically here, what's going to stay the same? So the first thing that's going to stay the same is the company. We're Quality Bus. Your buses say Marlboro School District on them. A couple of them, the spare buses here, say Quality Bus on them, and that all is going to continue. Also, we're still going to be located where we are right here on 9W, serving the district in the same way, with the same staff, the same buses, and the same service level. The school district has a relatively new contract that has some very clear service stipulations, and those are all things that we're going to continue to meet as we have for the past 3 school seasons. We also are going to continue to work collaboratively with the business office on the routing, as we have. There's a couple of things that I'll just kind of mention while we're on this piece. One of the things I think that we're kind of most proud of is our DOT safety score. So we rewind 3 years ago when we came to the program here in Marlboro. One of the things that lacked was a bus program that featured a really strong score. If some of you recall at the time, the score was in the low 80s, and it was certainly a concern, I think, for many folks here. And this year we celebrated our highest score ever, a 99.1% passing rate with the Department of Transportation. And this year, year to date, we've featured a 100% passing rate to this point. So the DOT score, I think, is certainly some indication as to the advancements that were made in the program. And with us this evening is our lead maintenance tech, Kevin Darcy, so a lot of the credit goes to him and his team for having done that. Some enhancements that are going to be coming to the districts, which Brett's really going to cover, are some big improvements to the safety program, a lot of which center around technology, and also some operations support, which really for all of you what that means is backup for Adrian and I. Because what you know is you've seen our faces here a lot. You're going to continue to see our faces because we're the team on the ground. But what I want you to know is we have an awesome team that stands behind us and that will stand behind us so that if there comes time that we need some support, we've got it. So with that, I want to introduce Brett Wester.
Good evening, and I appreciate the time to be able to explain what's going on with quality and how the improvements are coming. The biggest thing is that we're enhancing the safety programs and some of the other programs that we have currently at Quality Bus. And the whole point of this is to make it the safest program that we can and to make sure that we do it the right way all the time. So one of the things that we're adding in is currently they have a system called Synovia. That's a GPS system. It's a very simple system for them to just know where the bus is. We're going to be bringing in a system called Zonar. And Zonar will have a tablet on the bus that the drivers will be able to use to do a pre-trip and post-trip, take notes on any defects of the buses. It'll be able to go right back to the garage immediately through wireless technology. So they do that for the system, and then also we can still locate buses, and we have very good control on a lot of things with this system, in that we can see everything that that bus is doing and be able to pull it up real time. So it could be anything from speeding to idling, and a lot of other performance issues that we can look at to make sure that they are being safe in the bus. So we had a few points we wanted to just put in. I don't want to make it too long for you guys on each slide. Drive Cam is another thing that's coming in 2019. This is a program that is based to make our drivers safer. And what it is a camera system that is mounted on the windshield. We spent a lot of time with New York State DOT to make sure it's in the right place in each bus. And what it does is it has a camera that looks out and a camera that looks in. And anytime there's certain triggers, mainly off of G-forces, that anytime there's a trigger on that camera, it feeds back 8 seconds and then also records ahead 4 seconds for a view of what may have happened. And it's nice because we can see a lot of things with this, where if somebody doesn't have a seatbelt on, or if they somehow grab a phone or something else near their seat and they weren't paying attention, trying to eat in the bus, there's a million things that they could be possibly doing, and we can make sure that doesn't happen with this system, and we coach those drivers to make sure it doesn't ever happen again. So this will be coming again sometime in 19. We'll give you an update as soon as we find out what month we'll be installing it. So the system here, just to give you a quick rundown, what happens is they capture the data. That data goes through the wireless system to the DriveCam folks, and then they actually analyze the videos, and then they send them to us if there was an issue. And then from there, we actually track in their system on how to coach the drivers, and if there's ever any reoccurrences, everything pops right up for us. So it's a nice system. Bus Tracker is another option that we're going to have, and I will get this up and running as soon as possible if you are interested in it, but this is actually a cell phone, a smartphone app that a parent can actually look on the system and pull up their child and log into the system and get the credentials to get in. And it pulls off, for example, like a student ID number and a bunch of other information that they would have to enter to get in it. And we can walk through all of that. But they can actually see where the bus is and how long before it gets to their stop. So when you have bad weather, when you have other things that are going on, something happened to the bus, and we haven't been able to call them yet for any reason, this will at least tell them what's going on and approximately how far the bus is out. It's a great technology. On average, it's cut out about 97% of our phone calls to locations, especially on the bad weather days. We have new training programs that we've already brought in, and we'll be implementing them over the summer. This is called the STAR training program. It's through the School Bus Safety Company out of California. We have a video program that's for classroom training that right now is approximately 26 to 29 hours, depending on what type of classroom we have to go through. For example, a special needs driver would have additional training compared to a regular ed driver. So by the time they get done with that, and then also with the behind the wheel program that we have a minimum of 40 to 50 hours that each driver and then monitor would go through about 2/3 of that. Half of it also for their training. And it's an excellent program. It covers all kinds of safety features and basic aspects of driving a bus. A few other things that we're bringing in is we are bringing in a new position. It's a safety and training supervisor position, and it is a dedicated person that has no other job responsibilities except for aspects of safety and performance of our drivers, including training, key performance indicators, and things like that, which I'll talk here in another slide, but also our compliance, our hiring, our training, recruiting, all those aspects. We'll have monthly safety meetings to make sure that as a group, We make sure that all of our drivers and monitors move forward every month with just a little bit of retraining or training in something that they may not have had yet. So we make sure that each month throughout the year that we're always improving our folks. And then the safety committee for Quality Bus will actually be a group of individuals across the location from different areas like maintenance and drivers and monitors and managers. And we actually cover quite a bit of different aspects from a facility walkthrough, making sure that everything is where it needs to be and up to par. We'll check buses out. We'll talk about our operations, any issues we might have on our routes or children that we transport. And we work together as a team to make sure that we can get results for what the issues we have or anything that's going on. Key performance indicators, I've listed a bunch here, but I just wanted to give you an idea of what items that we can look at. Right now, Mike's whole system that he has is very limited in the availability of different information. With bringing in Zonar and a few of our other programs that we have, there's actually quite a few things that we can pull up on a daily basis, and we can look at different time frames. We could look back 6 months, we could look at that day, we could look at the week, the month, where we can actually pull up our pre and post trip records for how the drivers did on time and whether or not they were compliant in doing a proper pre-trip and post-trip. Our on-time performance to the schools, I can pull that instantly. If you had a question, we can pull that up and give you a percentage on how we're doing and where we've improved. Speeding, again, it's an instant report that we can pull up for any time frames. We can it's all versus posted speed. We can look at the speed limit. We can look at it a few miles over the speed limit. We have all different ranges that we can put in and make sure our drivers are being safe drivers. Child check, also making sure that each one of those drivers does a child check for each tier of their route, and that they're also doing it when they get back to base to make sure that we don't have any children left on the bus. Idling, preventive maintenance, swipe compliance, which is punching in and out, and vehicle utilization and staffing are all some additional reports. I think right now total reports just for me alone, I have close to 40, but these are the ones that really pertain for you guys on what would be important for you. So again, this stuff is able to be pulled immediately. It allows our managers to be more organized and to be able to see information quickly instead of having to go and run reports in all different areas of the business. This ties everything together, and we actually have coming up here in the next month that I just found out in our meeting here over the last couple days that we actually have a driver evaluation or overview that's going to be coming in for each driver. And it will tie all these together and basically give them a score. And those scores we'll use to make sure that we know who we're talking to first. So, and that's really it. Is there any questions?
Yes, I do have a few questions. Sorry, Bill. The speeding. We actually use a similar system at work, but I'm curious on your speeding. When a vehicle is speeding consistently, I'm sure you know statistically that vehicle is much more likely to get in an accident. So on a speeding event, does it automatically tell you a driver's speeding, or do you have to go find to see if the driver was speeding?
It's in the system, it is not a 100% live system, but we do have alerts that can be set up where it does flag us. So I may not get it within a minute or two, but we can set up alerts at certain levels to come out to us.
Okay, and then hard braking events. Our system, if a driver goes from 50 to 30 in a certain amount of time, they consider it a hard braking, it automatically generates an alert. Does your system do the same?
DriveCam will.
Okay.
Not Zonar. But
Great.
DriveCam is the one that's based off of G-forces. It could be a pothole, it could be hard braking, speeding up too fast, it could be a hard turn. Any type of event that will throw that gyroscope off, it'll automatically record it, and then they look at it and send it to us if there's any problems.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
One of the things that I talked about, Pat, that we wanted to get a clarification on is Mike's had a series of buses that we come up with this DOT rating which is what we were so critical about and wanted. Now with a merger, what buses are we looking at?
I did clarify that with legal, and we looked at the contract document, and the contract document is very explicit that the vehicles, the safety ratings based on the fleet of vehicles servicing Marlboro Central School
Okay.
District. So it is the vehicles that are sitting down in the terminal.
Perfect.
Yeah, and Frank, just to offer some more clarity, our group score across the entire state is a 94. So kind of in either case, I think we're pretty proud of the
Right.
entire group score. I mean, here, I'm particularly proud because we're substantially above our group score. But I think in either case, both of them represent something to be pretty proud of.
Yeah, no, well, we were just more concerned you going to a large company.
Sure.
You know, what is your nationwide, you know, that, it really changes the larger you get. So, but if it really is our buses, that's all that matters. That's,
And everything that we're bringing in is actually improving what they're doing already. And we're getting a lot of those systems set up in place and brought in, and even to the effect of even like an eye wash station for one of our mechanics. We're upgrading it to what we want instead of maybe just a simple one. We're getting a good system to bring in. We have fire cabinets and all kinds of other things that they weren't implementing in the past, and it's stuff that's standard for our company. So really everything that we're doing, I don't know of anything that's taking a step back in any way, shape, or form. It's all moving forward.
So, I have two questions. So, all the buses will have the cameras, the small buses, the big buses, everybody will have a camera?
Yes, including any vans that might be the minivans or any other vehicles that are in the fleet, even vehicles that we use at the office. If it's a company vehicle, it will have the drive cam in it.
And Joanne, also perhaps to add a little bit more clarity, the current contract requires that we have what we call CCTV or surveillance cameras in the bus. Those are going to continue to exist in their current form. This is additional camera that's placed in the vehicle that's primarily used for the driver. You know, so again, the cameras that we have in place that are really there kind of more to monitor passenger behavior at this point, those cameras continue to stay.
Well, I figured they were gonna stay, but this is more to see what's going on the other side, the outside of the bus, and what the bus driver's doing, and what's going on.
Correct. This is really about employee feedback.
Right.
That's the idea of that with all the buses.
Right, and the CCTV cameras really worry about inside the bus, and when we have an accident or something else happens or somebody hits us, we don't have a lot of records unless you can catch it through the windows, where this drive cam is definitely facing forward and you can see what's coming.
thank you.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. So
Sure.
you're making some significant investments here, technology and even the supervisor, and there's 3 years left in the contract. Is there any pricing changes that are going to take effect as a result?
No.
So let me ask you a general question. So what is the value when National Express comes in and takes over a company like this, an existing contract, and then you put money on top of it? Like, what's your longer range plan and what's in it for you?
Some of the things that we are doing, and when you talk about like our key performance indicators, there's things here that as we evaluate what's going on, we can save some money. And that is the money that's going to be replacing the money that we're going to be spending. So it might be, for example, a driver that comes back and goes in the yard and they get done, but yet they don't punch out for a little while. It's just an example across the country. If we can make sure that those people are getting off the clock, that they're doing what they need to do, that's something that we can make sure that we save some money, yet at the same time service the contract like we're supposed to. And if we can save a few dollars and put the dollars back into the company to make it better, that's the whole point of it. And go ahead. DriveCam, for example, DriveCam has cut down accidents and injuries across the company. We have a huge amount of savings. There's a lot of programs that are going into the maintenance group also for better maintenance. We want world-class maintenance. And we are spending that money, but we know that we're going to get it back. If you have better maintenance on a bus, for example, your buses are going to run better, less breakdowns, and that's the way the company looks at it. And I'm not saying anything against Mike or George in what they did, but at the same time, we have a bigger buying power also than they may have had in some things.
Yeah, so John, kind of the two things I want to talk about was first, the safety and training supervisor. Currently, the contract calls for a part-time person. So that's what we've been doing for the past 3 years. It's someone who works currently at the site who also has other responsibilities. So kind of in our conversation, certainly we've had a couple incidents here that we'd like to mitigate that and eliminate them moving forward. So part of our plan was really, so for us internally, that's the allocation of a half a person. because what we want to do is we want to make that one individual's sole focus. So for us, that piece is really just kind of taking that person, some of their other duties away. Part of what that means is the larger company provides us a lot of back-end support. So, as a smaller company, we were doing things like HR in our building, and payroll functions within our building that now aren't being housed within the four walls of Quality Bus down the street. So really what it does is it allows us to take the folks that are there and let them focus on students and safety and not so much the back end of the business. So really that's how we picked up a lot of efficiency in terms of the safety person. And then the second piece, I think, was what Brett nailed on the head. I think it's just kind of a general approach of saying that, unfortunately, losses are part of the cost of doing business for us. And I think that from our perspective, it makes a lot of sense to make this investment to mitigate those losses. And I'm very confident that when we see this technology roll out, what it means is we'll have less breakdown incidents. Although we have very few, I think we'll have less accidents. I'm very confident in it. And I think really, at the end of the day, what we're doing is we're paying it forward, We're paying it now, and we're going to see those benefits.
Any plans to reevaluate or swap out the staff, the bus drivers, maybe even the buses themselves? What's any plans there?
We're going to continue as normal. I will make sure that we do have safe buses and that they're maintained properly. The staff, to be honest with you, when you get into some of the things that we start evaluating people, if anything, they're going to improve. If there's people that don't want to be with the program and do their job 100%, there may be some losses. But we want to make sure that we have the best drivers. And if we use all the tools we have, we will get those. And we may not lose a single person. But that's the whole point of the system, is to make sure we're evaluating properly and at a higher level than what we currently do.
So you think you'll keep the same buses, or do you look at that too to see if you need to
Well,
create or
for example,
swap out?
buses, we have a contract with International. We have contract with other companies out there, and it depends on the size of the bus. Vans, for example, a perfect example is Mike just had 9 Kias arrive in the area for the 4 locations. We're going with Kia vans now because they last longer, they have less maintenance issues and concerns, and they're actually a better vehicle than the Dodge Caravans that we've used in the past. So we're always evaluating, and each year the amount of technology that gets added into the buses is amazing. There's a lot of technology for to be able to stop the bus if they're creeping up on a car on the highway. That technology is coming to buses, not just cars. There's other alert systems that we have that are actually now being built into the buses. And we want to make sure we're with the right company. So there might be 5 or 6 years that we buy from International, and if they're not the top player anymore and they don't have the right systems, after, towards the end of that contract, we will switch to someone that is.
Okay, thanks very much. That's my questions.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
I'll
you,
leave
gentlemen.
this.
And that's all I have to report.
Okay, before we move on to public comment, I want to amend the consent agenda and add one additional donation. Pat, do you have, just explain what it is?
The donation?
Yeah.
It's a donation from the Touchdown Club to the Marlboro High School /athletics. There are 3 medium-size Power 5-pack flat rib belts and 3 large-size Power 5-pack flat rib belts. My understanding is they're protective belts that the quarterbacks wear for football. So it's equipment being donated to the district.
Is
So,
there a value, do we ask a value for it, or is everything else has got a value to it?
Motion to add it to the agenda. Joanne, second. James, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. What's the value on that, Pat?
She didn't list a value
Okay.
on there, so I'm not certain.
Yeah.
So this is equipment, not money then?
It's just equipment, it's equipment that's already been purchased, that was there, but it never got donated over, so we need to get it cleaned up.
In my understanding, it was equipment that went right from the vendor to the district.
Right.
We'll get that value out to you once we get an estimate from the athletic director.
I have a question. Is there any other equipment that has been donated or this year
I'll give you a perspective on that. We've internally changed our approach for tracking donations. So that's why you're seeing more and more donations showing up on the agenda, even when someone donates groceries for our food program. So now we've got a form that we use. I know forms are everything in a bureaucracy, but it helps us to internally track where those donations are coming from and where they're going to. So we're seeing better internal tracking of those donations, but then we're also following up after the meeting with a thank you letter out to that individual or group that does make a donation. So you'll see more and more of those donations on our agenda.
We do have a lot of people in our community that do a lot of community work and donation, and it's nice to recognize them and to say thank you.
Yes.
And the same thing, it's like, you're giving something to the school, it should be as a donation, in this way, it's basically the schools.
Correct.
Okay, public comment on the agenda items. Anybody have any public comment on the agenda?
Catherine Ciriello, Marlboro, and I'm also the president of the Touchdown Club. This just brief, I think the cost is probably about $500. They're brand spanking new out of the box. They haven't been used yet. We want to donate them before they are actually used by the players. As of right now, there aren't any, but as you know, we are a very active organization in supporting the football program, and I'm sure there will be more donations as the school year goes on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Dan Jackson. I wanted to make some comments on the bus company. I would like the school district to look into how bus company goes about hiring their drivers. I know it's probably a very difficult task finding good people. And I know from personal experience with this company, over the last couple of years, there have been a few incidents. I had an incident on the corner of White Street and Birdsall. My mother's car was parked on the corner. Bus came around, took her fender off, and the driver kept driving. To their credit, the driver was discharged. Most concerned this year, we had an accident where the bus just didn't even report the accident. They came right back to the school and dropped off the kids, which I know that you're aware of, and I presided over the case here in court. All these safety measures that are being taken are excellent. I think it's a great way to monitor the drivers, but it might be worthwhile to take a step back and ask the companies how their hiring process is. You can get driver abstracts, which say what convictions you may have had, but there's a new system that went into place a couple of years ago where you can get a compass report, where you can get a lifetime driving history of somebody. So for example, we've all had speeding tickets before. We go to court, we get a parking ticket. It doesn't show up on your record. But the compass report will have a history of every ticket you ever got and whether it was reduced to something else. So you could see a person may have nothing on their driving record, but maybe they've had a serious or a number of tickets over the years. And with these drivers, with CDLs, it's very important that they keep a clean record. So again, all these measures are important, but I think it's important to see what the hiring process is so that we have good drivers to start with, because, you know, the safety of all the kids are definitely, you know, important. So just food for thought. Thank you.
It's a service fee. We can't run them, but they can pay a service fee. Oh, yeah.
Hi, Tracy Tambori, Marlboro. Just a question. Where is National Express, is their national office located?
I believe it's Syracuse. Well, Brett, I believe, is located in Syracuse. I think that's their regional office.
Correct. Brett is out of Syracuse. I'm not sure where the national office is.
John, I'm glad you asked the question about the cost, because this looks fantastic as far as all the safety, but I'm concerned about us absorbing the cost eventually. I'm sorry that they left, because I did have a question. I wanted to know what other local school districts are they contracted with? So that we could possibly reach out to them, or you could reach out to them
Quality?
to get feedback?
Well, we have a contract in place, so while our contract's in place, there'll be no changes to price structure. The only time there'll be a change to the price structure is if we go for a renewal of an existing contract, or if we go out to bid. So the contract terms are the contract terms.
Right, I
As long
understand.
as quality bus is quality bus.
So at the end of the
I know-
5 years, will you put it out to bid again, or do you just?
Potentially, or there's the option to renew with the existing company. A lot of times, the way the cost structures work within the bus companies, you can maybe get one renewal out of them, and then they're gonna tell you, no, we can't renew anymore under the
Okay.
CPI increases, you gotta go out to bid, because they're gonna be looking to increase their price. That's a common
Right.
practice. I know for a fact that Quality does Port Jervis, they do Marlboro, they handle the cooperative transportation bid for Orange Ulster BOCES, and I believe they just got into Chester, not Chester, then it's, yeah, they took a account from, yeah, Florida and Chester, I believe.
So all of those school districts will be using National Express as well?
They all use Quality Bus.
Right, but
So
are they?
Quality Bus is now part owned by National Express, so
Okay.
de facto, yes, at each of
Okay.
those locations, everything that's happening here is gonna
Right.
be happening at those locations.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Move on to consent agenda. Resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, approves the following contracts, agreements, and reports as presented. Personnel action, CSC, CPSC recommendations, claims audit letter and report, equipment and book disposition, financial reports for May, Red Cross agreement, Dr. Dreyer contract, Honeywell law firm agreement, donations, reserve fund plan, health and welfare spectrum services agreement, direct energy agreement, right risk management contract, unofficial board minutes for June 7th, and the contracts for the Secretary of the Superintendent of Schools. Can I have a motion? James, second. Russell. Discussion.
I just have a question, Mike. The teachers that we're hiring, are they replacing the teachers that retired?
Correct.
So the English teacher,
Either retired or are,
high school.
they're either retiring or relocating to, like, they've resigned, so. Not everyone is retired.
because they, you know. We also have
Correct.
retiring, Elizabeth.
Mike, which ones are new hires? I didn't notice that.
If you look under G, certificates,
Okay, that's the new hires.
right, those are replacing either people that have retired or are, have resigned and moved to another district.
Certificates.
So they're not new positions, they're replacing existing positions.
Okay, thank you.
And then my other question is the law firm.
Yes,
We've been using them now for how long?
3 years.
That's to do special ed and when the teachers or principals?
Nope.
It's,
Special ed is with our retainer under the Pettigrew, Waxman, group. This one does student discipline. Yeah, principals primarily use them for student discipline matters and consulting matters, and we use them as the district's attorney for superintendent hearings.
right, so if the principals have questions, that's where they would.
Regarding student matters, yes.
Anybody else? Hey, just one thing I have, Pat. Just want to go over the anti-lunch shaming plan that we're going to adopt.
Yeah, you're going to be seeing a new policy that's going to come to the board, that's going to reflect most everything that's in this plan also. The plan is a requirement to get, by June 30th, we have to adopt a anti-lunch shaming plan. But if you have questions, I could.
No, I knew
Okay.
it was something new, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, that was on, I think in the budget passed, there was all, you've probably seen recently a lot of discussion on the national level, or at least the state level, about, you know, kids having their lunches thrown away from them, having to wash dishes. So new legislation was passed where you basically cannot discuss any aspect of anything in front of any students regarding any amount of money owed for lunches. So part of that requirement is that we have to have a anti-lunch shaming plan, and this plan reflects every aspect of what's required under the new law.
So
But you should see very, very similar, if not almost identical language once we get the new policy update that you'll go through the regular policy adoption process for.
Yeah, that was my question, was that none of this is in place today formally?
Well, after you adopt
After we
this,
adopt, I mean,
then,
prior to this.
well, we don't, we don't shame kids in the lunch program, but this is, I know when I worked at Orange Ulster BOCES, we did have a policy that if a kid got to a certain level where they accrued too much money that was owed, they were given an alternative lunch. So it would be a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or a cheese sandwich or something. None of that's allowed under any of this now. We didn't do that here. We work to manage it by contacting the parents directly, encouraging them to fill out the application for free and reduced. So this basically just codifies on a state level kind of what the best practice or should be, so that obviously a third grader is not going to understand why they owe $25. So there's no.
Just curious, is this how we typically would introduce something new? First a plan, and then it becomes a policy or proposed?
Well,
It
we
really
react-
depends. Not all mandates from the state require a policy. Many require us to write plans that don't get acknowledged by the board, and we have to put that to the state. So it kind of varies.
Yeah, under this set of circumstances, this is required to be adopted by the board.
Earlier this year, we trained Fred and his office staff to use the Blackboard Connect system to communicate to parents directly charges that are.
So once they hit they can shoot out a form letter or send a phone call, hey, right.
Any other questions? Okay. Cast your votes.
I'm going to lag behind. It just logged me off for some reason. Tracy can log the vote. Oh, then, yes. So you want Teresa to log the vote? I'll be there in a minute, but. All right, I can do it. Never mind.
Okay. Oh, yes, go ahead.
So officially, we just hired a few people, as you probably just heard, and I'd like to introduce or at least speak to some of them that are here tonight. Let's see. Well, I can speak to it in order. Andrew Ugolino has been working for us as an E&L teacher, and he's moving over to the English department. Actually, worked very closely with the English department throughout the year. And Andrew, unfortunately, can't be with us tonight because he's with his family up north of here on a previously scheduled trip. So, but I would like to say Andrew is certified in English Language Arts 7 through 12. Also, he's certified as an English as a second language teacher. He did get his undergraduate degree from SUNY Binghamton in English, and he has 2 masters from SUNY Binghamton in educational studies and also in a second language. So, Andrew, welcome to your status change here in Marlborough. We're also welcoming back Michael Sosnick, who was a math teacher that was laid off a number of years ago and is exercising his right to return to us under the preferred eligible list. And Michael will be returning to the math department with his previous status. He has a bachelor's in mathematics education from SUNY New Paltz and instructional technology master's from the New York Institute of Technology, and Michael will be at the middle school. Welcoming brand new to Marlborough is Trevor North, a fellow science teacher, I'm glad to say. Welcome, Trevor, as a chemistry teacher, 7 through 12. He has his bachelor's in chemistry from SUNY Stony Brook and a master's in adolescent science education from CUNY Brooklyn College. And Trevor is here tonight, so welcome, Trevor. We also have a new music teacher in the elementary school in the music certification area of K through 12, Ronnie Sharon. is here, and he has a bachelor's in music education from Nyack College and a master's in music education from Five Towns College. Quite a talented musician, and we are very happy to have Ronnie here with us tonight, and welcome you to the Yes, and we have Tina Long, also known as, who's coming to us in the area of music as well. I'm sorry, in art, excuse me, sorry.
Like art,
She's our
music.
Art teacher, K through 12. She has her undergraduate degree in art from SUNY Oswego, and we share that alma mater together. Both of us graduated from SUNY Oswego. And she has her master's from Manhattan College in art education, and we welcome Tina to the high school with the art department. And with that, I pass it back to you.
Okay, we've got our second reading and adoption of policy. Resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of Superintendent of Schools, approve the second reading and adoption of policy 6130 and 6215 as presented. You have a motion? James, second. Russell? Any discussion?
Just a question, Mike, any major changes here in the policy that should be noted?
Since the last time or from the original?
From the original.
Yes. Substantial changes actually in limiting, the language was limiting in the way that it was because it wasn't in compliance with what the new regs show. So the new language kind of generalizes the approach to the APPR process. Sorry. I'm sorry, I got distracted. The APPR policy is more general rather than more specific, so that every single change we get regarding APPR doesn't have to be a policy change, and the changes come often.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. And nothing since the last time we saw it?
nothing, exactly the same, yes.
Yeah, John, the process with them is the policy committee gets them after the administration's done. We do ours, and before they even come for a first reading. And then once they come to the board at the first reading, nothing changes unless somebody finds something as a whole.
Correct.
Just so you, and then that would have to be discussed at a meeting, because we would have to go back to a first reading because we changed it.
Correct.
Just think for future. Yeah, we didn't do as many last year as we did the year before, hopefully.
Right, and a point of interest too is we get these updates from our policy service occasionally. Some of them are recommended, some of them are required. And as soon as we get those, we vet them administratively, and then we push it out to the policy committee. So this is not the full read of all policies. This is more of a, an occasional update based on, like you'll see one coming on the lunch shaming at some point. So, those are either updates to existing or, hey, here's a new regulation that you need a policy for, and here's the recommended policy. Now you need to localize it.
Okay. Old business. Does anybody have any old business? Oh, we didn't vote yet? Okay. Now old business. Anything? Okay. Under new business, we had some discussion on the student rep. The committee, and unfortunately Susan and Tony couldn't be here tonight, and myself interviewed all the candidates and really felt that two of them really stood out, and we wanted to deviate from what we've done in the past to allow what we got last year was good in an aspect of what we got, but a lot of it was a regurgitation of what we were getting in our regular reports and not actual information back from the students as to what they saw. So one of the things that we tossed around and really wanted to try and do for next year is we have 2 meetings a month. have one representative at each meeting. They would alternate between meetings, no two, and then depending on each other's schedule, but one of them would be at every meeting to do a short report. And it would also give them a chance to interact with a larger group of students to bring back information to the board, about, what's going on and what the students are feeling. We have the administrators and the teachers that bring stuff back. We hear stuff from different areas, but sometimes that's the area that's lacking. So that's the committee's recommendation, is to move forward with the two people and let them work out the schedule. We would only see at every board meeting one member. I know there was a lot of questions.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. I just, I know I raised quite a few questions, but what I've seen in the past with the reps is it's very limited engagement here, and I just feel, I felt that having two with such limited engagement at our meetings, there's just not enough responsibility, so to say, for them to come back with info to us. And my hope would be, if we do the two model rep, that maybe we can enhance the responsibilities and request more from them to give us a broader look at the schools.
And I think that's really what we challenged them. They had some ideas and some things, and one of the things afterwards, our thought process was, if everybody agreed to this, we would do it. We would sit back down with them, the three of us, and say, okay, this is really what we're looking for, so you to bring back to us. They had some different ways to engage the students, and what the plan was, and then to see what they had to say and do just that. And we try it for a year, and if we decide it's not the best way to go, we go from there.
I'm all right with that. I just, what you just said, that the three of you will meet with them to kind of, put parameters out there and get feedback from them of what they can also contribute and ideas from them. I think that it's worth looking at and going with.
I think that you all should have an input of what you want brought back. Because again, I think each one of them should bring back a report, because they all have different people at the high school. They all have different friends, different socials. So for me, it would be a question for each one of you to who's ever going to be the liaison here at the board, to go back to the student and say, this is what we want. The elementary school, we just started doing that a couple of years ago. There's not really a lot for me for the elementary school or the middle school. Basically, it was started to find out what was going on at the high school, bringing it back to the board, and seeing how we could help the students. And it kind of got off track the last couple of years. So, those would be my suggestions, would be sit down as a team and then go to the students. But I think you really need to concentrate more on the high school and find out what's going on, what they like, what they don't like, what teachers, what's going on with teachers, how they're getting taught, something, because that's the way it originally had started out.
Yeah,
it was nice, interacting with the students. And then somewhere along the line, we kind of got a little sidetracked and brought the elementary school, the middle school.
Well,
and there's not a lot going on with those two.
Well, and conversely, we did a thing this year, like with the elementary school, where the seniors went down and did the walkthrough. And there are some seniors that go down, or high school kids that go down and meet with and do things. So one of the things, even one of them had mentioned, was maybe one lunch period a month, one of them would go down, because the kids would flock to them anyhow.
Right.
Just because it's a big kid
right,
there.
It's a big kid.
And you get a little feedback. We don't, like I said, the administrators give us excellent reports of what's going on in the building, but that feedback of what the kids are feeling would be really what I think we're looking to get.
Especially about the high school, but they did the walkthrough like that years ago, with the caps again, and again, that got stopped, and I'm glad they did bring it back, because I think it's a positive thing, especially for the little kids. So, that'd be my suggestion.
Yeah, I just want to make it the best experience for them as possible, so they can get the most out of it. And the last thing I do want to suggest is maybe halfway through the school year, we switch them so that because they're going to, if you just do the alternating, they're going to be at a workshop all the time and not a regular.
Yeah.
So I think halfway through, we should switch them so that they can experience both types of meetings.
Yeah.
That's why I suggested, Russell, was that each one of them bring a report every time they come.
Yeah, but what Russell's saying,
No, I
they're
want
gonna bring a report, but
I
if
want
you,
them to
if
see
you don't
student
do,
of the
if
month.
you're not
I
here
want-
for student of the month, half the year,
Oh, right,
ever,
right,
you know,
right.
get
They're
to
gonna-
see.
yeah,
I
right.
thought it's a great idea.
That actually is a good idea.
And I think with their diverse involvements of things, there are gonna be some times where one's tied up on that one.
Right.
And the other one works for them, so it'll definitely, okay.
Thank
So, being there's no major objection, I'm gonna resolve that the Board of Education approve the student board representatives for the 2018-19 school year as Elizabeth Goodenough and Matthew Jackson. Can I have a motion? Second. Okay. Russell and, James. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay. Yep. And then one other thing.
I have something on other items.
Oh, okay,
Other
go ahead.
items. When we
No,
get
go
to
ahead.
other items, go ahead. We'll wait till you're done.
Just officially, we've got to resolve that the Board of Education approve the change of date for the reorganization meeting from Thursday, July 12th to Monday, June 9th at the, July 9th. June 12th to July 9th. July 12th to July 9th. Wow. Monday, July 9th is going to be the meeting at the elementary school because the board, thanks to Ralph, reminded us the town board has a meeting. Can I get a motion? James, second. Russell, all in favor? Anybody opposed? Go ahead, John.
I have a couple of questions on the topics that got brought up in Mike's superintendent meeting. So the first one, Mike, is now that we have the security audit results and you're analyzing it, we spent a lot of time in the budget meetings talking about how we would come up with ways to fund some of those things once we decide what we want to do. And now that we only have one meeting in July left and one at the end of August, how are we going to do that? Are we going to have side meetings to engage, or what's the process of how we're going to do that analysis and make decisions with?
It's a great question. It actually really kind of depends upon the scope of what we would be looking at as far as changes go. How many of them are procedural changes, how many of them are enhancements that are going to be technology related, how many of them are going to be personnel related. So we literally got it last evening. So it's 104 pages long. I haven't digested it yet. So it's going to take a little time to really filter through it to see. I don't see us doing it as an event. I see it more of a process of evolution for us. Mike, I mean, is that your perspective on it too? It's
Some of those items are things that we talked about already, or possibilities like vestibules and things like that. It was interesting because today we were over at New Paltz at a leadership forum, and safety in the schools was a prime topic there. And the main speaker also said, you know, I just find that schools are going a little overboard, and, you know, talk with your community, make sure you're not going overboard. So we want to just kind of pace this out. Again, I've read about 20% of the report. It is a long one, and just haven't really absorbed everything that's in there. I think that as we talk about it, there are some priorities. I think you want to know what the priorities are. But I think that we really have to get into this report and take a look at what would make sense and how the superintendent wants to prioritize that. And certainly the board is going to have a hand in it.
well, yeah, we'll get it into your hands so you can start to read through it too.
Well, I would think specifically after the reorg meeting on the 9th, we'll know who the representatives are to the safety committee, and they should really delve into it quickly, because I would assume that we're gonna have to, at some point in July, have a safety committee meeting, you know, and go from there to try and get some feedback out to everybody.
Do you anticipate any like special meeting or something to brief the board before August, since I assume you might be bringing proposals and
I'm not
funding
anticipating
questions?
that right now.
No, okay.
I anticipate a safety meeting,
Mm-hmm.
and then if there's anything that we need to do as far as any actions that require board action, it would be at the August
Okay,
board
so
meeting,
we as a board will rely on the committee, safety committee.
Correct.
And our reps to
Well, we'll all have
engage,
the
and,
report, too.
and we can engage with them to give our opinions or whatever, so they know what.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of light on what we do as a
Okay.
board, but remember, as far as public action on specific items, This
Right.
is so detailed that this is not something that is a dialogue for the public.
Right,
So
right. No, I was
that's why-
thinking more of the funding part, like we were talking about
Yep.
with the budget time, how we were gonna pay for some of these things and where were the give and takes gonna be. And we left that whole conversation.
Yes, correct.
It's from the budget, we brought it to now, right, or whenever now.
Correct. So that's a piece
Okay.
of all of it.
That's how
Okay,
it is.
that's even related to that special ed element. I mean, there is contingent money in our budget. We just want to limit how much of the contingent we spend before we even open up the school year.
And I think some of those recommendations really speak to some of the drills we run, how to improve those drills. There's some really, what I saw in there was some real low-cost items that we could do better under our present structure. So before we get to that, we want to talk about some of these ways to improve our drills here, to improve tabletop drills, to make sure we're including students a lot more and that they have a voice and we have a 360-degree perspective on that. We've got parents coming forward now, sharing some information and their perspective. That's where my focus is anyway, the drills.
And there certainly will be some dollars and cents items, and that is absolutely one of the charges that we put on ourselves, is to figure out how we can reallocate staff so that we don't run into budgetary issues on it. So that's part of what we needed a report in our hands for, so that we can figure out, okay, it's not going to be dramatically different than those key areas that we talked about, but now we start to drill into the specifics. What does it mean as far as hiring goes?
Yep, that's really what I was asking, the process, and
Correct.
I just anticipated it to be sooner in the year. Obviously, it didn't, it's not in our control, you just got it. That's where that comes from.
We'll get the draft out to you sooner than
Okay.
later,
Yep.
and then obviously, once we give some feedback, we'll get the final out. But this is a living document, it's not a, excuse me, I'm losing my voice a little. It's not a one-and-done element, this is a living experience for us, so.
Okay. Anybody else have any other items?
Yeah, I had another question, another one on the topic of schedule. You were talking about scheduling and potential changes to the school calendar. So I just want to bring up something. Quite a few community members actually approached me towards the end of the school year, I'll say complaining, but just showing concern about the fact that we had some changes towards the end of the year. They felt it was somewhat abrupt, like, for example, the last week of school, the elementary school went, an hour earlier, different half days on the middle school that weren't really originally planned. So, and again, I realize that a lot of this has to do with the state continually swapping things around and your reaction and then what happens as a result of the winter. And so I know a lot of that can't be helped, but I just think we should just, what that concern is that people who have two working adults in the household really struggle to do last-minute childcare when things are, even just a few weeks in advance sometimes are a struggle, especially those where you have a sudden half day where you weren't planned. So I think we should just think about that as we do this, to give as much advance notice as we can. I never really thought about it when it was being discussed with me, because in my case, we're a little more flexible, but some people are not, right? And it's just something to consider, and I thought I'd bring it forward too.
Very valid point. The communication structure wasn't as best as it could have been this May and June, as far as the elementary school especially. There were some notices that went out early on, but it didn't go out in as broad a spectrum as it should have. So that's something we own. The middle school one, there's a lot of variation based on your grade level and the day and the test. So I think that is a piece that certainly middle school parents start to grow into, because that's also the reality at the high school level. So that's definitely something that we can make an effort to really put it out in front of everybody very clearly, that schedule for the middle school time during that last couple of weeks is a varied approach to what school looks like for a lot of different reasons. So thank you. I mean, that's something that we'll do a better job with communicating out as early as possible.
And in the case that you just actually brought up, a couple of the cases that actually people brought to me were more elementary school than middle school. When you get to middle and high school, the flexibility of the students themselves, because they're older, they can go home by themselves.
100%.
Just one more last thing quickly, since we're on the topic of transportation tonight. Question, maybe to you, Pat. Do all our buses have air conditioning?
I would say none of our buses have air conditioning, except for possibly some of the buses that are used for transporting kids during summer school.
And some of the smaller, almost all the smaller ones.
None of the big buses have it, but any of like the 20 passenger, the smaller buses, anything that runs through the summertime has air conditioning.
Not okay, the only ones that are contractually required are the small ones.
Correct.
Right, because some of them are also special ed, and there's requirements with special
Okay.
education.
I asked because I chaperoned 2 June class trips at the elementary school over the course of the last few years. That was like 90 degrees and no air conditioning with 2-hour bus rides, one to Cow Caverns, another one down to Jersey City, which is, you know. And I just, if we had the option, I was going to ask if there's a way we can prioritize it.
But something like that, you wouldn't take
Oh, we have had it before?
That would be part of our contract with, you know, a renewed contract. If we build that in, it changes the cost structure, obviously, but
change the cost
we could
structure
figure out a way to take some of the cold air at the bottom of Howe Caverns and bring that back with you.
I just thought we had, somehow I thought they were air conditioning.
As I recall, Pat, we actually had this discussion a few years ago because, much like John, I had an issue with a hot kid getting off the bus, and I had to hear about it all day, daddy, daddy, daddy. So I asked the question, and as I recall, we do actually have some large buses with AC on them, but they tend not to use them because it's unfair for some kids to have it and other kids not.
Well, none of the buses are required by contract.
Correct.
So there may be buses in the fleet.
But
that
is it
have the
possible, so
capability.
I know we have buses in the fleet, is it possible when we're scheduling field trips to use the bus with AC rather
You
than
probably
the
have
bus
to
without?
negotiate a different rate for that, because obviously their fuel consumption is very different, and that's a large cost driver when you're running buses, especially if you're running to faraway places.
Can we look into it? I mean, because
We
the
could
fuel
talk to
rate,
them.
what are we talking, maybe another 1,000 a year at the most? I mean,
I don't
fuel
know.
is, it's
We can
not
ask
gonna
Pat to
be-
take a look at it
We
and talk
could,
with
yeah,
Mike
we could
about
look
it.
into it.
I mean, certainly if we have the bus with AC and we're talking 2 hours on a bus at 90, you should be able to use the bus with AC.
Well, you also get into issues if, you know, if they had one bus that had AC and was scheduled and that bus had a breakdown and wasn't available.
course.
You know,
No, there's always gonna be
There's a host
issues,
of
but-
issues. We can look into it, though.
Great,
And-
thank you.
And I brought that up not for the comfort of the chaperones, but thinking you've got 3rd, 4th graders, 90 degrees, no bathroom, and you're stuck in traffic in New York City.
Well,
going
I
to-
hear from my kids when they come home from
I
school.
just, it could be, you
how
know,
hot
kids
it is
get
on the
sick, they could
second
pass out,
floor
that kind of stuff. It's really
of
more
their
think about
elementary
it.
school,
I mean,
so.
It wasn't really for me, but it's a whole other story.
Any other items? Okay, so we do have to do one other approval. Susan's going to go to the law conference, and we don't need to be on the audit report that we don't have a PO beforehand. So we'll approve Susan to go to the law conference. I'm assuming it's the White Plains. Latham. The Latham one, July 24th. Can I get a motion? Russell, second. James. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? The only other thing is, I know she had sent everybody a reminder out. We have money in our budget. We actually have a very small budget. But we do have money in the board's budget for the conference. So this year it's back in New York City. So everybody should really look at that and think about it, and we can talk at it at the next meeting if anybody wants to go. They do have some of the law seminars are tied to that also at that time. Latham and White Plains is much easier to get to, in my opinion, but Russell doesn't have any problem going to New York City. So.
Well, it's a full day on the law conference. It's
Right.
one full day, and then the conference actually
Yeah.
starts that night.
But we save a little money if if people decide, we save $50 if we decide before the cutoff, August 17th, for people to go in October. So just if everybody can think about that. Motion to adjourn.
Adjourn.
Joanne, second. Oh, James, all in favor?
Aye.
And before anybody goes, tonight was Joanne's last night. Thank you, Joanne, for your 7 years of
Thank you.
service to the community and on the board. Good night.